Welcome, everybody. My name is Marty Mascari. I'm with the North Central Texas Area Agency on Aging. Once again, we're very blessed to have Haiman+Hogue here for our partnership in these webinars. But today, we're also blessed to have Kristine Reed and Pamela Farris. Kristine's with Dignity Memorial, and Pamela is, and you're going to have to remind me. I'm sorry, Pamela. The Hospice.
Rejoice Hospice.
Rejoice Hospice. Thank you so much. I should have had that in front of me. I am so sorry. And so we're blessed for a great webinar today. And I know we had rescheduled this from last month. I apologize for the inconvenience, but we are here today to handle all this great information. Fred, if we can move to the next slide, and we're gonna let Sheila talk about the CEUs.
Good morning, everyone. I was answering a question. Yes, most of you have been on with us before, but in case you have not, well, two things I want to cover. A, this presentation is good for CEUs, for nurses, whether it's RN, LVN, it doesn't matter. Nurses, social workers of any sort, LPCs, and assisted living managers, which I hope some are here because this presentation is very, very good for them. Not that all of them are not, but we definitely would like that. Now, how do you get your CEU credit? You simply fill out two forms, which, by the way, I will send Marty while y'all are talking. The eval form, which you're used to filling out, and the sign-in sheet. Send those back to me, and I will be more than happy to send you your certificate. Okay, just that simple.
Great. In addition to that, we have a Google survey that should pop up when you log off of Zoom today, and that's a survey we do for our funding objectives that we set forth when we applied for the funding to organize these things. And so, if you please complete that as well. If it doesn't pop up, I realize some of you have pop-up blockers on your computers. That link will also be in the follow-up email with Sheila's two forms for the CEUs. Sheila, if you'll introduce Pamela, we'll get rolling.
Yes. All right. I would like to introduce, well, actually, let me go ahead and introduce everyone at one time so that we can just seamlessly transition. Pamela Farris, who is a nurse, so she can identify, you can ask, the nurses here could feel free to ask questions at the end. We are going to save our questions for the end, and those of you that have been on with us before understand why that is, because it throws the presentation off. It can throw the speakers off, but it mainly throws off the attendees because with their attention and everything. So please keep your questions for the end. There'll be plenty of time for you to ask questions. Anyway, Pamela Farris is my friend, but she is also a nurse for a long, long time. She is in charge of nurses and is in charge of this hospice company, which we love because they are faith-based like we are. So they deal with so many issues in hospice. She is going to break the barrier and explain to you what hospice can be used for, because it's the most misunderstood of any agency that is around us. Hospice, I think, is probably the most misunderstood. So she's going to enlighten you on that. Then we have my boss, Fred Haiman, founding partner of Haiman+Hogue, who is going to speak to you about the documents that everyone has to have in place, explain why you need them, what they do, and everyone needs them, but especially when you are aging or you're in the last stages. You definitely have to have these documents, and why? To protect you and your family. Then we have a treat. We have Kristine Reed, who's also my friend, and she is from Dignity Memorial. She is going to explain to you. You may think that you understand funeral arrangements, but I doubt that you do, because there are so many choices today, and there's some legal things that go along with that too, that she and Fred are going to go into as to. There's documents that have to be done for that as well now, but there are so many choices and so many, you can turn it into a celebration of life, which is what more people want now. And there's so many options that it's going to be amazing to you and going to be a wonderful end to this presentation to help you help others, because remember, that's what we're here for. This is strictly educational, no selling. We're to help you help the ones that you have. Okay, without any further ado, Pamela Farris.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really glad that you're here. This is my first webinar, so I may stammer a little bit. I'm here to talk about hospice and palliative care, what the differences are, who qualifies, what is the definition of hospice care. So hospice care, did you know that 25% of the deaths occur at home? More than 80% of Americans would prefer to die at home. And I think it's really important that people know the resources that it would allow a loved one to pass with help at home is what they would prefer. So what is hospice care? It is comfort care. It has to be referred by a physician, and then the hospice physician will confirm that this person is eligible for hospice, which provides support and care for those in the last phases of life-limiting illnesses. It recognizes dying as a part of the normal process of living. This is very much the journey in life, the final journey. It affirms life and neither hastens nor postpones death. We focus on the quality of life for individuals and their family and caregivers. We do this by a team of professionals. Both hospice and palliative care are teams. The core aspects of hospice care are person and family centered team care. We provide a range of services, including nursing, home health aid, medications, the durable medical equipment, for example, hospital bed, overbed table, bedside commode, shower chair. If a Hoyer lift is needed because somebody needs total assistance on transfer, we provide that. Any incontinent care supplies. We also have volunteers. Most hospices have a volunteer program. And then there's a bereavement program for 13 months past the time of death so that we can give ongoing support to the family. It's important to remember that the key word for hospice is comfort care. When a person does not enter optimal comfort and care for that person in whatever setting they are, be it home, nursing home, veterans, homeless shelter, anywhere, any faith, anyone. And this is 100% coverage if the person is on Medicare, if it's managed care insurance. Most insurances have some sort of hospice. And then it also can be charity, or some are able to handle charity is done so that the person can get hospice care at home without concern. The team approach is where the family and patient are in the middle of the center of the focus, surrounded by the team of nurses, volunteers, physicians. You always have a hospice medical director. And then if there's an attending physician, who actually did the initial referral, they may or may not want the attending physician to be in the loop of what's happening with their patient. And if they did that need, if not, all care is passed over to the hospice company and the hospice medical director. We have social workers that they can assist in getting the DNR in order. A person does not have to have a DNR. It's a big misconception. And it also causes and raises a lot of fear. That's not necessary. It is better to have a DNR at some point, but let's help the family get to the point that they're ready to sign that DNR and understand what that means. That at this point in life, when this person is in the final stages, there's no curative treatment for somebody whose heart is stopped. What person? So we just grab gradually try to support families and get them to that point, but that is not absolutely necessary to have in place. We have the bereavement counselor who does post for one that supports the family by reaching out with phone calls, visits, whatever. Sure that somebody who followed this journey with them is there, or at least to lend support. The hospice aide, they are the foundation of every hospice company. When they're wonderful, they make your hospice wonderful because it's a personal thing. They're actually getting very intimate and personal patient. Oftentimes, if it's in a home setting, something I put a lot of emphasis in always is our hospice aides. They're wonderful. Then therapists. In hospice, you cannot get physical therapy except for perhaps a evaluation, but that cannot be an ongoing. Physical therapy is not ongoing in hospice care. But for safety purposes, we can do some sort of therapy that way. And then, of course, your case manager, your RN, who is in charge of that patient's care. And for continuity purposes, I try to make one case manager in charge of this case. An LVN may see the patient. If the patient's seen multiple times a week, an LVN may be a part of that team who sees the patient along with the RN on alternate days. So that case manager works as the liaison between the patient and the physician. She manages all aspects of care. It's a very important role to provide maximum comfort for the patient while in whatever setting they're in. Next. So as I talked about the work of the hospice team, every patient has a plan of care, and that is for each discipline. A plan of care is devised and signed by the hospice physician that includes all medications, all durable medical equipment. What are the goals? Pain management, skin integrity, incontinent needs, support. So that the plan of care evolves around all of the patient's needs. So we get the plan of care in place and get that signed by the hospice physician. We follow that plan of care every 2 weeks. There's an interdisciplinary meeting that we reevaluate every patient and the plan of care. Do we continue the plan of care we're going? Is there anything more that we need to add to this care to ensure quality end of life care, maximum comfort and support to the patient and family? So we attend the emotional, psychosocial, and spiritual aspects of dying and caregiving. So Medicare recognizes that the spiritual needs are an important element of hospice care. So even if the person is not committed to a faith, Medicare wants a chaplain in the first 5 days of care to evaluate if spiritual concerns are being met. And I think it's important because the spiritual needs and aspects of the patient and family are very important in the final stage of life. We also teach the family how to provide care. Unlike home health, where a home health nurse will come and do wound care and we are empowering and teaching the family to do these aspects of care, and also teaching them what to expect, what the symptoms will be when the patient's condition changes. We are teaching them medication management, medication administration. Also, if the family needs any care or support, we play a very vital role in helping them place the patient, find care, private caregivers, personal care agencies, whatever aspects of care needed. That's why it's very important as a hospice to develop working relationships with like-minded people who understand end-of-life care and who are able to meet the very demanding needs of this care for the patient and family. We are always advocating for the patient and whatever that patient and family needs for maximum support, comfort, because that is the key word of hospice, comfort. We will do it and ensure that they have everything necessary to meet what is inevitable, death. We provide the bereavement care and counseling post of the patient dying, and many times hospices attend funerals, and oftentimes the chaplain administers the service. I know ours do, and I know hospices, you see it in obituaries, and you see families express. It's important that hospice is for the final 6 months of life, and no one can put an actual timeline on that, but to the best of the physician's ability and the referring physician's ability, due to the patient's diagnosis, for example, cancer, heart disease, end-stage Parkinson's, end-stage lung disease, Alzheimer's, senile degeneration of the brain, that is a diagnosis that is the end result of Parkinson's, Lewy bodies, all roads of dementia end to senile degeneration of the brain when no other diagnosis. Medicare is very strict on what diagnoses can be used. So it is provided in the patient's home or nursing facility, assisted living facility, hospital, the hospice residence. If there is an inpatient hospice, and here in Dallas, there are a couple of inpatient hospice facilities, a patient does have to meet criteria to be in a GIP unit or inpatient unit. Even hospice serves homeless shelters and prisons. We go to wherever the patient is to provide hospice care. Who pays for hospice? Medicare pays 100% always for hospice care. Part A is billed. Medicaid covers hospice. Insurance and HMOs cover hospices. Sometimes there is a copay. All the benefits are always run. And of course, the patient will always know upfront what's going. And then if private pay, sometimes a combination of all these, and again, sometimes charity, as I mentioned. The admission criteria to qualify for hospice care, these are the general requirements. A life-limiting is 6 months of age takes normal course. I live in the service area of the hospice, but there are hospices everywhere. So if a referral is made to a hospice and it's not a service area, that hospice is going to refer to another hospice. This is why networking is very important, and to have hospices that you can refer your patient to. If your patient moves out of the service area, decides to go to a different family member that is outside of your service area, we will find the hospice to take care of them. There is, of course, the consent to accept the services that can be signed by the medical power of attorney or representative that is in an advance directive if the patient cannot sign themselves. When you are on hospice, you are giving up intervention treatments. No curative treatments can be done with hospice care. This includes, most of the time, any regular labs, x-rays, unless there is an accident, but doesn't mean that we won't intervene if, for example, a person develops a cough. We will give an antibiotic and any other support, anything that will provide comfort to the patient, but not necessarily do a curative type thing such as x-rays and aggressive labs, unless it's absolutely necessary. If a person falls and needs an x-ray, of course, that is done. So I want to just be sure that I recapped hospice care and see, could you please care? So yes, caregiver sitter services are not covered by Medicare. It's not covered by hospice. Hospice covers for an aide to come and provide personal care. That's 30 minutes to an hour, a bath, change the sheets, anything personal. However, they have other patients and then they're not there full time. This is why we have to oftentimes reach out to our personal care service agencies that provide 24-hour care or private caregivers, but that is not covered by Medicare. That's one of the questions on the chats. Let's see what else. Yes, the hospice team is intermittently there. At the end, however, if a person is in a crisis where they are requiring morphine and lorazepam, which is a relaxing agent, and they're requiring that every 1 to 2 hours, then a crisis care can be in place. Medicare will cover that. It is a strict criteria, though. Oftentimes we have to encourage the families to hire help if the person, for example, only needs medication every 6 hours. That's not a crisis. And dying, even though it is so difficult, it is not a crisis. So hopefully, if the team has done their job, they have guided the family to be prepared to this point. But if it is unmanageable by the family and the patient is having constant pain, we do put crisis care, which is 24-hour care by an LVN, where an RN comes daily at that point. All right. I hope I'm not missing these questions. All right.
I'm going to ask, we need to speed up a little bit. We're a little bit behind on time.
Okay. What is palliative care? Palliative care is supportive care.
Fred, I think we're going to need to move to you, and maybe we can come back to Pam at the end if we can get her audio working better.
Okay, I will go ahead and skip through then, and we'll go back to that if we need to.
That's right. And we'll definitely go back to her contact slide at the end as well. But go ahead, Fred. Why don't you pick up from here with yours?
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna try to get through these rather quickly, but I want you all to know that we are available to answer questions after this meeting if anybody needs anything. But I'm going to cover the documents that everybody over the age of 18 needs. And I say over 18 because until you're 18, you're covered by your parents. You're a child and you cannot sign documents. But the minute the person turns 18, everyone should have that. And this includes people going to college. We do college student protection plans for children that go off to college, but everybody over the age of 18 needs these basic documents. And why do you need these documents? You need these documents for what I call the what if. What if I get sick? What if I get in an accident? What if I become ill for any reason or become disabled or become incapacitated? Who do I have and who have I given permission to take care of my finances and my medical decisions? And that's really what it comes down to is before death, while I'm still alive, if I have a problem and I can't take care of myself, who have I appointed to take care of me in both financial and healthcare issues? Who's going to be able to manage my money? Who's going to be able to talk to banks and pay bills and transfer funds and consent to medical treatment or make medical decisions for me? Who am I going to allow to get my medical information or medical records? Who can talk to my employer or my educational institution or accept any money on my behalf? So again, this goes on and on and on to the potential things that can come up when you're not able to take care of yourself and you need somebody else to step in. And again, this, I have to point out at the top of this slide, you have to remember this doesn't even apply to spouses. Spouses don't have an automatic right to take care of each other and make decisions for each other. Even spouses need documents between each other so that the wife says, my husband has the authority to do this, and the husband says, my wife has the authority to do that. Can you imagine going to a hospital and hearing the words, I'm sorry, we can't talk to you because this person hasn't signed a HIPAA form or hasn't signed a medical power of attorney? That would be a worst case scenario. And I think about that with my 20-year-old daughter who is off at college at the University of Alabama. And if she was ever in an accident and taken to the emergency room, and I called up and said, hey, I'm Ashton's dad, can you tell me what's going on? And they tell me, oh, I'm sorry, we can't talk to you because Ashton's an adult, she hasn't signed the proper forms, and therefore I don't have legal authority to talk to you. That would be an absolute nightmare for a parent and for anybody that's trying to do that. Can you imagine not being able to make decisions for somebody in a medical emergency, or somebody not being able to make decisions for you? Will somebody be able to make medical treatment decisions when that time comes? And I always tell people, yes, the doctors are going to talk to you as long as they can. But if they can't talk to you because you're unconscious, or because you're in so much pain, you're not thinking rationally, or your mind is not in the right place, who can they talk to? And a lot of people don't understand that if you have not appointed somebody to make medical decisions for you, the medical professionals have legal authority to make all decisions. The hospitals, the doctors, the medical staff. So I personally, I would like to appoint somebody I trust and I know that thinks out for me and what I want, rather than somebody who doesn't know me making those decisions. Will somebody be able to pay your bills and talk to mortgage companies and landlords and utility companies? Will they be able to manage your bank accounts or your finances, be able to transfer money if they need to, or be able to apply for a lease or break a lease if you're in that situation? What about tax returns? Can you imagine being sick and not being able to file your own tax returns and not having somebody on your behalf to be able to do that? Or apply for government benefits if all of a sudden you are disabled and now you qualify for Social Security or Medicaid and you don't have somebody that can do that for you. So all of these things that I've talked about, in worst case scenario at the very bottom of this slide, if you don't have documents in place and you become totally incapacitated, it could require a legal guardianship. And that is a courtroom legal process that requires the hiring of attorneys, because you cannot do it on your own, and it is very, very expensive. So you want to have things in place to avoid that at all possible cost. So, this is one of the slides that I put up just because there's a lot of things people just don't think about. What about you get a jury duty notice or a traffic ticket that has to be dealt with, or a passport renewed, or a driver's license or car registration? There's so many different things that we take for granted every single day that we just take care of, that we don't even think what will happen if I can't do it myself and I haven't put documents in place to allow somebody else to do it. So the reality is if you don't have legal documents in place, nobody other than you has legal authority to take care of these things. So how do we fix that? We fix that by doing what I call the living documents. I call them the living documents because they're good during life. They're not good after death. They are only good while you're alive, when you can't make decisions for yourself. So the first one is what everybody's heard about, is the power of attorney. The power of attorney is a document that gives somebody authority to make financial decisions for you. Now, the one thing I have to emphasize on this is the power of attorney is not a power of attorney is not a power of attorney. Power of attorneys are only as good as they're drafted. So you want to spend the money to have a properly, comprehensively drafted power of attorney, because they're only as good as the people you give them to. So when you're sick and you've got somebody that needs to go deal with Bank of America or financial institution like Liberty Mutual or Northwest Mutual or New York Life, you want them to have a comprehensive document so that when they give it to that financial institution, it's got everything it needs, so the financial institution doesn't have any reason to decline it. Now, a power of attorney is the document we have more problems with than any of these other documents, because financial institutions have more rules than anybody else. And so I had a client call me one time that I had done documents for her mom about 7 or 8 years ago. And she calls me and says, I used mom's power of attorney and the financial institution is telling me they will not accept it because it's older than 5 years. And she says, does that mean it expires and it's no good anymore? And I told her, no, that doesn't mean it's no good anymore. It's still good, but it's not good to this financial institution because they have a rule that says they will not accept one older than 5 years old. So we had a real dilemma because mom could not sign a new power of attorney because she now didn't have the mental capacity to sign it. And luckily in that situation, I was able to deal with the financial institution and get them to accept this document. And we didn't have to go to the cost of a legal guardianship. But a power of attorney needs to be comprehensive and it needs to be updated on a regular basis. The second document that you want to look at is the medical power of attorney. This is the document that allows somebody to make medical treatment decisions for you if you cannot make them yourself. Again, if you don't have this document, the medical professionals have full legal authority to make all decisions. The third document is probably the most controversial and the most misunderstood, and that's called the Advanced Medical Directive. It's also called the Living Will. It's also called a directive to physicians. So it has multiple names for the same exact document, depending on where you are, and every state has different terms for them. But this document is different than a DNR or an out-of-hospital DNR, do not resuscitate order. And the big difference between this document and a DNR is this document says, I want the doctors to do everything in their power to treat me. I want them to do everything in their power to save me and make me well. But if they've exhausted all medical means and now there is no more hope and the decision is either put me on life support or let me die naturally, this document kicks in. So this document kicks in only after there's no more hope. A DNR, or do not resuscitate order, is a do not touch me order. So it's an order that says, if I have a heart attack, do not give me CPR, do not shock my heart, let me die. And so I don't do a lot of DNRs. DNRs are usually for people on hospice or at the end of life. Somebody that is at the point of their life that says, if something traumatic happens to me, do not bring me back. I just had to deal with that with my 90-year-old mom. I'm taking care of my 90-year-old mom who lives in a skilled nursing community. And the last skilled nursing community she was in almost choked her to death because they fed her pork chop way too big and she swallowed it and it blocked her airway and she almost died. And when they rushed her to the hospital, the doctors called me to let me know she was breathing through the size of a straw when she should be breathing through the size of a garden hose. And she's refusing to be intubated. And they were calling me because I'm her medical power of attorney. And if she went unconscious, then the decision became mine. And I told the doctor right there on the phone, the decision has already been made. My mom has already decided she does not want any measures whatsoever. She has a DNR in place. I will honor any decision she has. So you don't have to call me back because if she says she doesn't want to be intubated, she's not going to be intubated. So that's a DNR versus an advanced medical directive. Now, an out-of-hospital DNR is very popular and hospitals give those to people to fill out. I'll be honest, I do not like them because you fill them out on your own. And if you fill them out wrong, they could not do what you want them to do. Because an out-of-hospital DNR is kind of a combination, advanced directive and DNR, depending on how you fill it out. So it can work either way. And so I recommend people do their own documents, not try to do a fill in the blank document like an out-of-hospital DNR. The next document is a document everybody's heard about. Everybody knows about HIPAA. HIPAA has made it really difficult for people to get your medical records and medical information. But the one thing people don't understand is that when they go to a hospital or when they go to a doctor and they sign the HIPAA form, that HIPAA form is only good at that institution. So it's only good at the hospital you sign it at. It's only good at your doctor's office. It's not good everywhere. So we recommend that people get a universal HIPAA form that is good anywhere they go. So I have a form that says, no matter where I am, no matter what, if I'm in a car wreck and you take me to any hospital in the Dallas area, I have a form that says who can get my medical information right away. And I carry these forms through what we call a company called DocuBank. Now, I didn't give that slide here, but if you'd like some information on DocuBank, you can look them up online. It's DocuBank. It is a company that allows you to upload these forms so that you carry a credit card in your wallet that tells emergency people how they can download your medical power of attorney, your HIPAA form, all your medical documents that they need. It's an excellent program, has nothing to do with our firm. I just refer my clients to it for years. So if you'd like more information on DocuBank, go ahead and reach out to us. The last form that we recommend is you do a declaration of guardian in case of future incapacitation. Now, this form's a little bit different because this form is just in case I need a guardian. If there becomes a time where somebody has to go to court and apply to be my legal guardian, this form tells the judge who I want my guardian to be. So I name who I want my guardian to be, and I also name who I don't want my guardian to be. So if there are troublemakers in the family, or if there are people that are causing problems, this form allows the judge to know who I don't want. So again, we don't want to use this form if we can at all help it, because we want to stay out of court if at all possible. There are certain misconceptions with these forms. One is that you can sign them after you're no longer legally competent. And this sounds kind of silly, but I get calls all the time. Mom is in a nursing home. We've had to move her to memory care, and I need to bring mom in to sign a power of attorney. And I have to tell them, if mom's in memory care already, she probably can't sign a power of attorney because it's too late. So these documents need to be done before you need them, because by the time you need them, it's usually too late. The second big misconception is that one size fits all. I can get on the internet and do all these documents. Well, you can, but I don't recommend it, because a document is not a document is not a document. Just like a contract, the contract is only as good as how well it's written. These documents are the exact same way. When we do documents for clients, when I do a document for an 18-year-old college student, it's not nearly as comprehensive as I do a document for a husband and wife who have 3 kids and a house and a rental property and some investments. Everybody should have documents tailored to what their situation is. So you don't want to go on the internet, you don't want to go to Home Depot or Office Depot, and you don't want to go to an attorney that doesn't do these, like a divorce attorney or a bankruptcy attorney. You want to get these done by a professional that does these for a living. And the last misconception that I get a lot is these documents survive death. I get the call all the time. Dad just passed away. I need to pay dad's bills, but I have dad's power of attorney, so I'm going to get into dad's bank account and pay his bills. I have to tell them, no, you're not, because if you do, you're committing fraud, and that's a big, big problem, because the document dies when dad dies. They do not survive death. So there's potential problems, and I want to go through these rather quickly because you're going to have this slide and you can look at it, but there's a lot of potential problems that's come up with these documents. Do they have the necessary information that they need? Are they legally valid? Does that means are they signed properly? Are they notarized properly? Are they current? We recommend that our clients update their documents every 3 to 5 years to make sure they stay current with the current laws and the current situations and the current rules of the institutions they're giving them to. Do they give the proper legal authority to allow somebody to do what they need to do? We see this a lot with real estate. I need to sell mom's house so that I can pay for mom's nursing care. Well, the power of attorney doesn't give them the authority to do real estate transactions. If it doesn't give you the proper authority, you can't do it. Doesn't give the details of the current situation, what we're trying to do, that kind of goes hand in hand with the legal authority. Does it cover everything in your state? This is a huge one. You have to have documents from your state of residency. So if you live in Texas, you need Texas documents. If you live in North Carolina, you need North Carolina documents. If you live in Colorado, etc. California, I get a lot of Californians moving to the DFW area with California documents, and they're upset with me when I tell them your California documents are still good, but they're not real good here. You're going to have problems with them. You need Texas documents. And are they too ambiguous? If a form is not clear, the financial institution or the medical facility is not going to accept it if it doesn't say what they know it needs to say. So this takes us to the death document, and I'm going to just briefly touch on these, and if you guys want more information, we can get with you on that. But there's really two death documents that you look at, and everybody knows the last will and testament. This document is not good during life. So when people put things in it during life, it's useless because the document is not triggered until death. But a lot of things people don't realize, especially in Texas, is a document is not valid until a judge says it's valid, because almost all wills have to go through probate. So wills have some problems because of that lag of time between death and the time we can get to court. So a lot of my clients, yes, if you want a will, you want to at least have a will, because if you don't have a will, the government has a will for you and you don't want their will. And the will does allow you to do certain things like give away your stuff and name an executor who's in charge of giving away your stuff. And you can appoint a guardian for minor children, but I don't recommend it because of that lag time between death and court. You can do funeral arrangements, which I don't recommend because of the lag time again. And you could do a testamentary trust, which is a trust that goes into effect after death. I don't recommend those because a testamentary trust is not good during life, and you're putting the burden on somebody else to set it up after death. And again, it's triggered upon death, but it doesn't go into effect until the probate process. So a lot of our clients look at living trusts. I could spend a whole hour just talking on living trusts. They are the greatest things ever invented, and most families could benefit from a living trust. They're not just for the rich and wealthy. They really are good for anybody, and a properly drafted living trust is drafted for the family that it's drafted for. So it's tailor-made for you and your situation and your goals and your finances, etc. So I'm going to leave questions till the end, and I'll come back to this, but I want to pass the baton to Kristine and let Miss Reed take over from here.
Hello. All right, guys, thank you so much just for allowing me to be here along with Pamela and Fred just to talk about getting ready for our final arrangements. So what I'd really like to touch on really is just the pre-planning piece, and I'll kind of go into when death occurs here in a few minutes. But first of all, I just really believe so strongly that no one should have to walk into a funeral home after someone has passed away without being prepared, without the knowledge, because unfortunately that can cause a lot of harder decisions and choices. People have a harder time navigating when decisions have not been made in advance. And sometimes that means scrambling for money or fighting over, hey, what are we going to do with our loved one and what are we going to do for services? So I'm just going to walk you through today on exactly how that can be much easier. Pre-arranging for sure can save time, save a lot of stress, and I'm going to mention stressful events here a lot in the next few minutes. But it truly just can be a gift to those that you love. And it allows people just to focus on what they need to focus on when death occurs. They don't have to focus on all those decisions. They can truly just focus on honoring their loved one and really start their grieving process in a better way rather than being overwhelmed with the decisions or the what ifs. Have I made the right decision? What did they really want? So as you can see on the screen right now, these are some of life's most stressful events that the University of Washington Medical School had done a survey a few years ago. And overall, if you guys look at these, you can really see they're listed there in order, you know, what are the most stressful. And you can see number one is going to be death of a spouse. And right behind that is divorce. And that's kind of looked at as a big life event as well, because it's separation from someone, right? And that can really feel like a death at times, as silly or serious as that might be. But it's so important just to realize that because this is a very stressful event, we certainly need to plan on. So certainly, as we go through this, just know that losing a loved one is going to be super stressful. And I'm just going to walk you through how we can make that a lot easier. So you can take this personally, and I suggest you do this, right? If you were asked the question right now, gosh, if you passed away right now, does your loved one, your best friend, whoever's going to handle things, one, do they know that they're in charge of doing that? And do they know who to call, right? Do they know, do they have something lined up with Fred, right, or his team, somebody like that? Do they know which funeral home needs to be called? And overall, like, how do you want to be remembered, right? And how are you going to start this process? And just know that your loss is definitely going to impact somebody emotionally, financially, physically. It's amazing what grief does to us when decisions, especially, are not made in advance. So when you pass away, of course, your loved ones are going to be overwhelmed with the grief. They're going to be overwhelmed with the emotion. And we don't want them just sitting at the funeral home, worried about paperwork, as I mentioned, worried about making those decisions and wondering how are we going to pay for all this, right? We want them to have all the arrangements just made in advance. Pretty simple. We definitely plan for weddings, we plan for births, we plan for college tuition, we plan for all the big events of life. And this is just another piece of that, right? This is a huge life event, whether we want to face that or not. And if we can put as much focus on our final event, our final celebration, our final, whether it's burial or cremation, if we can focus on that, then it's going to be much easier for those that we leave behind. So the details are in place. And we also, and I'll get to this as well, but we also spend thousands of dollars, right, every year for different types of insurance for things that might happen, right? Our homeowner's insurance, our car insurance, in case we're in an accident, in case our home catches on fire. So why not go ahead and get something taken care of and pay for something that's definitely going to happen? Because none of us can avoid death, of course. So let's plan for the inevitable for sure. So next, just know I'm going to walk you through some steps here because, as I mentioned, we don't want the families coming in and not knowing what needs to be done. So the planning ahead is going to take care of that painful guesswork. Unfortunately, I'll share a quick experience. My brother passed away 3 years ago, and of course, right, he was younger, just under 40, and had never spoke a word of, hey, what do I want when I pass? And unfortunately, my dad had to make the decision because he was not married. What are we going to do, right? So my dad chooses cremation. And then, of course, as he's going through his apartment, a month later, finds a document just in his handwriting that said, I do not want to be cremated, right? But he never shared that with anybody. So now my dad and my family has to live with the fact that, gosh, it's really not what he wanted. It's not what we knew about. So unfortunately, we could not honor him in that way. So some people have to really live with that. And unfortunately, we don't want families to do that. So, you know, pre-planning is going to eliminate that guesswork. It's going to lock in today's prices if you get it pre-funded. And it's just going to give those you leave behind that peace of mind. So it certainly makes sense to do that. So let's put a plan in place. First of all, we've got 4 steps, and I'm going to go through them. Reflect, record, secure, and share. All are equally important, and none can be missed. So the first one is just reflecting, right? What do you want? There are so many decisions that have to be made, and nobody wants to talk about it, right? We try to avoid conversations about death, unfortunately, and it's important. I've been in this business now for almost 20 years, and it still brings a tear to my eye when my husband and I start talking about, gosh, What's going to happen when we pass, right? Because it is a hard conversation. But you have to ask yourself, how do I want to be remembered? Do I want to be buried? Do I want to be cremated? Do I want a service? Do I want a small gathering? Do I want a party? Right? We're really focusing now on celebrations of life. And that's really what more people are wanting, because they don't want the sad and somber service anymore. So there's different ways we can do that to truly honor somebody's life. But you really just have to start asking yourself the questions, what do I want? So step one, reflect. And once you really decide what you want, you need to decide, where's my final resting place going to be, right? That might be a cemetery. That might be scattered in the ocean. That might be a burial. But where is that going to be? Do you need to be flown back home to be buried? Do you need to be placed at the local cemetery next to generations of your family members? There's just a lot of different options available, because permanent memorialization is also important. Once you're gone, you're gone. Some people say, well, I don't care. Just put me in a pine box, right? And put me in your backyard. Well, that's probably something that doesn't happen that often. I've personally never done that with somebody, but people tend to just shy away from this conversation. So once you decide what you want, of course, the next step is to record, which means just write it down, right? It's important to share that information with somebody, and I'll get to that. But it's also so important to just record the information. We offer, of course, planning guides, and I know our colleagues also do, right? Some sort of guide where you can write down your information, even if it's just a journal. Write down what you want, down to the smallest detail if you want, because that's definitely going to help your family later once you're gone. Occasionally I sit down with families and they come in and everything is written down. Sometimes I have people, they've written their entire obituary, minus service dates, because of course that's unknown at the time. And they also write down, you know, hey, I want my glasses on, I want to be wearing this dress, my nails need to be this color, and I want these songs played, or I want this person to speak at my funeral. So there's a lot of details that can be just taken care of ahead of time, and definitely just makes everything so much easier. So step three, once you record, you're going to be securing, and what that means is get things financially taken care of. By doing that, you're going to lock in today's price, which is a huge benefit because the price of funerals nearly doubles every 10 years. And even though cremation is definitely on the rise and can be a little more cost effective, it isn't necessarily that way all the time. So just know, if you can lock in today's price, you're not leaving anybody with that financial burden once death occurs. Most providers are going to offer payment plans. So if you can't pay everything in full today, you can do it over a time period that's more convenient and affordable for people. And on top of that, you know, sometimes people think, I've got life insurance. Well, life insurance is a great thing, but it doesn't necessarily work that well to pay for your funeral, because funeral homes are going to require payment in full by the day of the service. And you're not going to be able to file life insurance and get that money until you get a death certificate, and sometimes those can take a couple of weeks, if not longer. So it's just super important to know that funding is an important piece of this, so it is taken care of, so your family is not left with that burden. And the final step is just sharing, right? Talking to your loved ones about what you've decided, what plans have you made. It's okay to go purchase pre-arrangements from a funeral home, or get a pre-planning guide and write that information down that has to be included in your service. But if you don't share that with somebody, then that is certainly not going to be helpful to them at the time of need. Usually happens probably once a year. I see that a family comes to our location and, hey, I'm going to make arrangements for my mom. And then a month later, they'll come and say, oh my gosh, I saw that they had pre-arrangements with the funeral home down the street, right? And then there's that guilt because it was never shared with them. It was more of a secret, even though it was great that they did it. It's not that great if they do it and they don't tell somebody about it. So it's important to share our plans, just so our loved ones or those that we're going to leave behind knows exactly what needs to be done when we're gone. Thank you. Yeah, you can keep going on those slides if you would. All right. I didn't touch on the veterans. I will do that quickly. We also, of course, serve all sorts of veterans because we've got many of them, which we appreciate so much. But unfortunately, there's a misconception out there that, oh, the VA is going to take care of everything. And we hear this from families so much. And it is a very sad day when a family comes in thinking, oh, my dad was a veteran, everything's taken care of. Well, it's not. So that's why our veterans, especially, they need to know what is available to them, because the VA is simply going to provide a free burial at a national cemetery or possibly a transportation fee to the cemetery, and that is it if it's a private cemetery. So we really encourage them to come with their DD-214 to a funeral home so they can be guided through exactly what they are eligible for. And it's good to have that all done prior to passing. So, you know, there's really not a good reason, in my opinion, to put off funeral arrangements. Yes, it is a hard conversation, whether death has occurred or not occurred. It's a hard conversation to have, but it definitely makes it so much easier if people can get this done ahead of time. Again, it's going to just alleviate stress when you're needing to be grieving, you're needing to be focused on other things. It's going to ease the financial burden, provide you with a peace of mind, and really just let your family and friends celebrate you and what's important to you. So as you look for maybe a provider, a funeral home, you know, there's important things to look just to see what they have to offer, right? You want to make sure that they're accessible, that they're professional, that they're going to do things the right way, and choosing a provider that maybe offers a grief support, that they offer some sort of extended grief support or travel arrangements for family members flying in, since airlines don't offer any type of bereavement fares anymore. So there's a lot of things that funeral homes can offer to families, and I just encourage, ask the right questions, ask a lot of questions so you can find a funeral home that's a right and perfect fit for you and your family. Again, I just am glad I'm able to be here today to kind of go over why it's important to plan in advance, along with Fred and Pamela, because these conversations are hard. These conversations are not easy sometimes, but as funeral and cemetery professionals, especially, we're just committed to helping families through loss, but we're also committed just to educating people on what their options are. So when that day comes and we have lost our best friend, we have lost our mom, it's a bit easier. And of course, just so glad to be educating people like you guys today too, so you can educate those that you're encountering as well. Thank you.
Your to the contact slide here, if we could, which should be the next one, I believe. One, there you go. I want to make sure you have, well, no, let's back, if we can back up the contact slide for Chris, that would be great. Yes, I want to make sure we touch on this, that you guys have this. This is in the slides that that we sent you all, so you all have this, but I want to make sure we put it up. I don't know if you guys want to take a quick screenshot of it if you're interested and you have any questions for Kristine. And if you have any questions right now, you can put them in the chat. That would be great. I want to circle back and see if how Pam's if we've got audio, and if we can jump back to the slides. Pam, can you just test your audio? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's still bad.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but it's sketchy.
It's still really bad. Yeah.
Can you just call in?
I'm using my phone. Well, I'm on my phone.
Yeah.
I'm on my phone.
You're on your phone. Okay, so let's see.
Yeah.
Let's okay. If we, it seems much better. Let's get down. We left off. If we could move. Oh, that's her contact information. If we could back up a few slides.
To palliative care, I think.
Yes, that's exactly right. What is palliative care? There you go. If you just pick up right here.
Okay, I can't see the slides for some
I'm
reason,
sorry.
but the most important thing to know that palliative care is supportive care. It is not a program, but it's care. And when anyone is just seeking curative measures. So treatment that can enhance comfort. Comfort is very important and improves the quality of the individual's life who is facing a serious illness but may not qualify for hospice care. So a person does not have to be dying to get palliative care. The expected outcome is relief from distressing symptoms, the easing of pain, and enhancing the quality of life. The kinds, so in summary, that curative care is when somebody is still seeking a way to cure their illness. Palliative care focuses on the comfort and quality of life that may be provided with those curative treatments. Hospice care is when curative care is no longer an option. Everything has been tried and it is not working. It's time for hospice care, which focuses on the comfort and quality of life when cure is not possible with specialized care and services. There are many more hospice companies that are incorporating the palliative care component because the H word is very difficult for people to accept and to resign that hospice is where they should be. So palliative care gives them that option that they still have a supportive team that is going to maximize their comfort while they're seeking curative treatment. Thank you. I'm sorry for all of the, I don't know what's going on. Normally it's fine.
Okay, well
There you go.
Yeah, we want to leave up Pamela's contact information. I added your contact information to your slide, Pamela, so that we can share that. And then while we're doing that, if we could look at the Q&A and let's get to our question and answer. It's, you know, we work through technical difficulties all the time, Pamela, and that's just part of our life, you know, trying to do webinars. So we're great. And what we'll do is have Sheila look at the question.
I have quite a few questions and they're all for all three of them. Pamela, first with you, you had talked about, you answered one of these questions. The question was, could you please clarify that caregiver and sitter services are not covered by Medicare and hospice providers are present intermittently, not 24 hours, with the exception of crisis care. It's a common misconception that hospice care includes 24-hour care, and you did cover that. Well, then directly after that, Diana asked, what about hospital visits?
Hospital visits from, I don't understand.
Hospice.
From the hospice team. So we can go to the hospital with a doctor's order to evaluate and talk to the family for hospice care. And then a person could be in patient hospice if they meet the criteria, which is usually very end of life. Or if symptoms are not well controlled, you can do an inpatient hospice stay short term and go back to the home. But most of the time, inpatient hospital is towards the very end when the person cannot be cared for with other options.
Okay, good. I'm glad you clarified that because I didn't know that myself. Okay, now Kim had asked a question earlier. It's on therapy services. I have been told PT, OT, and SLP, which I'm not familiar with, can give services to hospice patients, not as a curative therapy tool, but to provide comfort to them. So I'm confused as to why it was stated that therapy can only be, thank you, Kim, speech pathology is what she's referring to. So I am confused as to why it was stated that therapy can only be for an evaluation, but not ongoing services.
So hospice does not cover ongoing therapy. There are some outpatient therapies that will bill Medicare Part B. And if they can do an evaluation and do that, but I would not say carte blanche across the board that everyone can get ongoing therapy, because that is trying to do improvement and curative type measure, which that is not what hospice is. But palliative absolutely can continue to do therapy. But hospice, I think that's going to be a case by case, and whether or not the hospice can get that approved by, the therapy that is separate from hospice can get that approved by Medicare.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is for Fred. And the question is, can parents make medical decisions for patients that are unconscious and do not have a medical power of attorney?
If the patient is under the age of 18 and their child, yes. But if the patient is over the age of 18, and even if it's their child, they cannot without documents. So once a person turns 18 years of age in Texas, you are a legal adult and you have to make your own decisions, or you have to have documents stating who you give permission to make decisions for. And so we always assume that, okay, that's my child. My child is 19, my child is 20, and I can make decisions for them. Well, maybe that child and those parents are not talking and they're not on good terms, and the child doesn't want the parent to make decisions for them anymore. The doctors and the financial institutions can't take that chance. So they have to have legal documents saying who has authority to make decisions for anybody over the age of 18.
Okay, the next, this is more of a statement, Fred. This is to you too. I work with older adults and find that the staff of hospitals do not even ask patients about medical power of attorney forms. They just talk to whomever is with the patient and claims to be that.
It depends on the place. You know, you're exactly right. There are some. We have many more problems with financial documents than we do healthcare documents. And when it comes to healthcare documents, we have more problems with HIPAA than we do with medical powers of attorney. I have found places that, so I take care of my mom. I have gone to numerous doctors and hospitals that all I have to do is tell them I'm my mom's medical power of attorney, and they don't even question it. They don't ask for the document. They don't anything. But I have gone to numerous that say, okay, you need to bring us a copy of the document because we're not going to talk to you till we see the document. So it's like a crapshoot. You don't know what you're going to get until you get there. And so, yes, you're exactly right. Some don't ask for it.
Okay, next one is for you too. Does a child make a decision for his mother that is not mentally capable to go to a nursing home without a medical power of attorney? In other words, can that child do that?
No, not at all. A child does not have authority to take care of their parent whatsoever without the legal documents that say they can.
Next, does a power of attorney need to be notarized with 2 witnesses, or does one or the other suffice?
Okay, the power of attorney in Texas only requires a notary. It doesn't require witnesses in Texas.
Okay, good. All right. One more.
That's a financial power of attorney. The medical power of attorney does require witnesses.
Okay, Leslie, do you get that? Okay, I think she was talking about financial, but yes.
Yeah, so statutory durable power of attorney for financial purposes does not require witnesses.
Okay, Sharon asked, does my DocuBank need to be copied and added to every medical professional's record for me? I have attempted to have DocuBank added quite a few times and they say it's not necessary. Should I insist?
Yes. I mean, that's what you have DocuBank for, is so that they have the information they need. So every time I go to my doctor, I give them a copy of my DocuBank card and I tell them, scan this into my file or copy it into my file so you have the information you need. So it's really, you do have to insist on it on some of them just because they're lazy. But yes, it's a good idea that everybody that you deal with has it.
Okay. Now, this next one is for Kristine. Lewis asked, how many death certificates are normal?
That is such a popular question that so many families ask. Everybody thinks either they need a set amount, 10 or 15 or 20, but it really just varies from person to person. It is no standard amount. So if someone comes into us and they have absolutely no assets, no bank accounts, nothing that they've owned, some families only need 2. And then we've got families that have so many assets in their names that they might need 30. So it really varies. And then, what we do when families come in is we basically ask all the questions. Do you have this, 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 and this? And then we recommend getting the extras because it's cheaper for them to buy multiple now as opposed to coming back later and getting more.
Thank you. Okay, and a comment also for you from Jean Marie. The VA does pay for death certificates as well, she says.
Not to my knowledge. I can't tell you if maybe they do that for active duty people, but not to my knowledge. I just worked with the family yesterday because they were adamant that there was a benefit for them for transportation fees. And right on the VA website, you've got to hit so many points in order for them to pay out anything.
And this is also for you. Thank you for the mention of funeral for veterans, and for those interested, review web information for military funeral honors. Upon the family's request, Public Law 106-65 requires that every eligible veteran receives a military funeral honor ceremony to include folding and presenting the United States burial flag and the playing of taps. The law defines a military funeral honors detail as consisting of 2 or more uniformed military. I know this to be true. However, you do have to schedule that. Kristine will tell you that. I know this because we did this for my dad. You do have to schedule it. And then they may not charge for that. Kristine, I don't know that we paid them because we felt like that. My brother and I we did that. I don't know that are you supposed to? I mean, we felt like that was just something you should do. But I don't know.
So it is provided. So if a family wants military honors, the funeral home will set those up for them with a DD 214. So that's a document that will need to be provided. Otherwise, we cannot do it, and we cannot get a flag, because just so you know the process on that, in order to get a burial flag, a funeral home has to have the DD 214 honorable discharge paper in hand, and we take it to the local post office, and then they will provide us the flag. Otherwise, we can't even get a burial flag for them, and then we can't set honors up either if we don't have that. So unfortunately, sometimes veterans don't have that accessible. Death occurs, and then we can't even schedule military honors, or they sometimes don't even have the option of burying at the National Cemetery, or it's just extremely delayed while we try to track one down.
Okay. Now here's a question, and this looks to me like it should be for Fred and Pamela.
Okay.
I would like to know, if the patient is unconscious, what do providers do?
That's a real broad answer there. I don't know. I mean, if a patient is unconscious, there's certain things that providers should do, but what they will do is a whole different story. If they're unconscious, they have to take medical measures to treat that patient if there's no one around for them to talk to. But if there's people around for them to talk to, they have to find out who is in charge, and they have to listen to that person who it is. And so that's why it's so clear that you let the medical facilities know who's in charge, so they know who to go to.
Now, Pamela,
Exactly.
if hospice is involved, then definitely you would have something to do that, right?
Well, if the patient is already on hospice, then you call hospice, and hospice comes out if there's a change of consciousness. But if the person is unconscious, first we need to find out why. And if they're not on hospice, of course you have to contact 911. Yeah, but we are always the new 911 if they're on hospice.
And I think it's probably protocol that if a patient is unconscious, they're going to do whatever measures they need to and assume that there's not any documents in place until they know otherwise.
Right.
Okay.
Isn't that so dependent on the urgency of the decision that needs to be made?
Very much so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Antoinette says, and this would be to Fred, a medical power of attorney, in her opinion, requires either witnesses or a notary. I don't.
Well, I don't know whether, I'll be honest, I don't know whether people will accept it with one or the other. Every document that we do both. We have witnesses on it and a notary. But as we sit here right now, I have to pull up the statute to see if that the statute says it can have one or the other, but I don't know that answer.
Now, this question should probably be for Kristine, but I think Pamela could probably answer this too. Who can obtain a certified death certificate?
That needs to be a legal next of kin, and you will have to prove that you're next of kin. Of course, if someone is coming in to make arrangements, let's say they're not the legal next of kin, but we've gone through our process just to make sure that there's no next of kin that's going to be making the arrangements. Maybe it is an executor that's been appointed, something like that. They're also eligible to do that. But nobody can just walk in and say, hey, I'm picking up a death certificate for my neighbor, at the county clerk's office. It's not that simple.
Right.
Okay. And you agree with that, Pamela?
I sure do.
All right, then Jean Marie says that the VA did pay for her uncle's death certificates. He was a Korean War veteran, and they gave them 10.
I will say the VA will not pay any funeral home directly for anything. If they are eligible for any type of benefit, the family has to apply for that on their own, but they do not issue death certificates. There's no way for that to happen. But I will say sometimes I've heard from families, are 10 death certificates included in your price for services? So some funeral homes might offer that the first 10 are on them, but I'm not familiar with that, and I've worked in other states.
Okay, now this is for Kristine as well. My husband was in the Army for 5 years. He says he can have a place for our cremation urns. He has put off contacting them. Would I be able to show his proof of military service, which is the DD 214 you were talking about, and obtain a plot? We have a living trust, Neptune for cremation and DocuBank.
Yes, so at any national cemetery, if he's a veteran with an honorable discharge, he is entitled to burial space, whether that's for cremation or burial. You can contact the National Cemetery just to make sure that you're eligible, but as long as you have that form at the time of death, provide that to the funeral home, and they'll be able to get that scheduled. You can't necessarily reserve a spot in advance. That's one thing you can't necessarily pre-plan for and go pick your spot out because those spaces at the National Cemetery are assigned as death occurs.
Now tell them where it is here, because I know we have one.
We do. We've got a wonderful, beautiful National Cemetery here in Dallas, just between highways 30 and 20 down in South Dallas towards Grand Prairie. So I would encourage everybody to go out there. It is quite something to see. But we can also send people to national cemeteries around the country and schedule as well.
Okay.
Now, I have a question on one of the things Sharon said. It sounded like she was referring to both of them. Does that include the spouse for the urn?
Yes. So as a veteran, you're entitled to 2 spaces at a national cemetery for you and your spouse. You'll be placed together. You even have options if let's say the husband wants to be buried and the wife wants to be cremated, you can still be doing an in-ground burial together.
Okay. Catherine has asked a question, and I know what the letters mean, but I'm not sure who this question is to. So any one of you jump in with this. She wants to know, so when does the next of kin come into play? That's all it says.
I'm not sure how to answer that.
I'm either.
Okay, maybe there's something further down here. Hold on, Pamela. We have so many patients who do not have a legal power of attorney for healthcare. Isn't the next of kin then authorized to make medical decisions if the patient cannot?
Not automatically. No, the law says that the medical professionals make the medical decisions.
Is that true in hospice as well, Pamela?
So when we sign them up for a hospice, we have a designated primary caregiver. If that person does not have actual legal authority, but they can act as the agent for that and making decisions as the primary caregiver once they're on hospice and the consents are signed.
Okay.
No, that doesn't mean that they won't honor the next of kin. And like I said, some hospitals will talk to the next of kin and without documents. So it really depends on where you are and what their You know, the reality is if you've got a hospital that's ever been sued for talking to the wrong next of kin, they're going to be real hesitant on doing anything without legal documents. It just all depends on who you're dealing with.
So yes, there's a primary caregiver that is on the consents, and that is who we deal with. And that person has to inform the rest of the family of what's going on.
Kristine, also when death occurs, the next of kin, if they don't have any documents, that is, if they can prove they're next of kin, that's okay with you, right?
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes we run into situations where someone, let's say, claims to be a niece handling everything. You know, we have to do our due diligence to make sure that, hey, there's not a surviving like wife or a child or someone actually in a higher rank to handle things.
Okay, good.
And I'm sure that because I see this all the time, we have issues of somebody claiming to be common law spouse and they're wanting to take over and they're fighting with the kids. And so it can become a family nightmare if there aren't things in place. That's why one of the documents we do, I didn't talk about it today, but we do a document designating somebody to carry out the remains. That is the person in charge of the funeral arrangements. So that's always a highly advised to have that.
And that helps Kristine out.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, now back to Pamela, the next question. My brother was on hospice for heart problems. He no longer qualifies because he was no longer deteriorating. When he was on hospice, only heart drugs were covered under hospice. Other drugs were still on Medicare D. The presentation seemed to indicate that hospice pays for all drugs. Please clarify.
Oh, no. We pay for medications associated with the primary diagnosis and anything related to comfort. So pain medications, sleep medications, psych medications, and poop. So there are everything related to comfort, but has to be related to the primary diagnosis. We do not cover insulin, for example, if it's a diabetic. Hospice does not cover that, or thyroid medication if that's not the primary diagnosis. Whatever the primary diagnosis is, and anything related to comfort, we do cover.
Okay. All right. Dickey wants to know, Fred, what is the name of that document?
The one I just talked about is the designation of a representative to carry out the remains.
It's called disposition of remains. Yes, something like that. Anyway, okay.
Very good. Well, I think we've gotten, but I want to make sure you get a chance, Sheila, to touch base on the CEUs once again before we start losing people at 11:30, if we could.
Sure. And Marty's helping me out because several of you have asked. We did a webinar with Marty, I don't know, quite a while ago. I guess we should think about doing it again. And it's called My Loved One Just Passed, Now What? Fred wrote this or quite a while ago because there's so many questions about death. What happens about the death certificates, about this, about that, you know, so many things. And it includes a 42 or 43 point checklist and of everything that has to happen. And some of it's common sense, but not all of it is. Marty is going to include that in your follow-up because there is that handout. And so many questions today have been about what happens after death, about death certificates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, and notice that Pamela also mentioned that hospice offers bereavement counseling, grief counseling for a long time. And if you will take advantage of that, I know this because my dad was on hospice when he passed, and it was wonderful to have that benefit. Just wonderful for my brother and I. So weren't aware of that, and it was just lovely. So anyway, just a thought. Okay, so there are two documents that I will send Marty immediately. Which is the eval form and the sign-in sheet. You have two ways to get them to me, either, fill them out and scan them to me, or even take a picture of them with your phone and send them to me in an email to Sheila@Haiman+Hogue.com. Then I will be happy to send you your certificate.
Real quick, we also have a Google survey to ask you to complete. It should pop up as you log out of Zoom, but if it doesn't, that will also be in the follow-up email. Can we go to the next slide and talk about the next presentation, special needs planning, important information for families with families of persons with disabilities. That's on June 21st. Join us for that. I want to thank you all. This was exceptional today, you all. Pamela, I feel so bad that you had the issues. It turned out well. We got the information across. Thank you. Is it Kristen or Kristen?
It's humbling. It's humbling, I'll tell you.
Oh, is it Kristen? Is it Kristen or Kristine?
Kristine.
Kristine, I am so sorry.
That's okay. It's a common mistake.
I've heard your name many, many times, and I just wanted to make sure I had it right. So Kristine, thank you so very much. And as always, Sheila and Fred, thank you. It was really exceptional. I will tell you firsthand, my father passed away last August. There was nothing in place. We knew it was a mess. It was a nightmare planning. It was an absolute nightmare. And I will tell you, because I had sisters that didn't care about his wishes in regards to even his final, his funeral. And it was just a nightmare. I can't tell you how valuable this information is, and the planning is, how important it is. It is huge, especially at an incredibly difficult time. So thank you all so much. Thank you all for joining us, and look forward to seeing you next time. And thank you all again. Have a great day.
Thank
You
you,
too.
Marty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.